Black Ops 6 Zombies is off to a flyer, and the future of the Dark Aether story was blown wide open after the ending of the Terminus main quest. Whether you're new to Zombies, or a returning player, or just need a refresher, here's everything you need to know about Dark Aether, and why the ending to Terminus is such a big deal in under 10 minutes. With the Aether saga nearing its conclusion, Black Ops 4 introduced a new story entirely separate from its predecessor, Chaos. Scarlet Rhodes, daughter of wealthy archaeologist Alistair Rhodes, enlists Bruno, Diego and Shaw to help find and rescue her father, who has been captured by the nefarious group known as the Order. The Chaos maps were more fantastical and mythology inspired than Aether. The main quest centred around completing a trial to access a Sentinel artefact. These artefacts held information on Prima Materia, the original building block material of the universe. In other words, the element 115 of the Chaos story. After freeing the Oracle of Delphi and defeating Perseus in Ancient Evil, Bruno and Shaw discover Alistair Rhodes and the Order had been in Delphi, yet were turned to stone. At the same time, the Oracle reveals herself as Medusa and suggests that Scarlet is a demigod. She looks Scarlet deep in the eyes, exchanging information on feats of human progress, and leaves Scarlet to collapse. Medusa claims she will open the Library of Alexandria and puts on an Order mask, while Diego protects an unconscious Scarlet. Chaos started to build some real momentum by the launch of Ancient Evil. But unfortunately, the plans for Black Ops 4 in the future changed for many different reasons. Apart from the odd Scarlet skin in COD Mobile, Chaos was considered dead and buried by most fans. A failed experiment that was thrown out far too early. The curtain closed on the original zombie story from World at War to Black Ops 4 in Tag der Toten. Primus Nikolai resolved the paradox by destroying the summoning key and sacrificing himself and his Primus and Ultimus brothers. This collapsed the multiverse into a singular universe, with everything else banished to the Dark Aether. Only Samantha Maxis and Eddie, the innocent Richtofen from Dimension 2210, survived, and were able to freely walk into the new universe hand in hand. During the Second World War, the Third Reich had several projects related to the undead up its sleeves. Die Wahrheit and Project Endstation ran simultaneously, focusing on the occult and science respectively. Wolfram von List, leader of Die Wahrheit, blackmails demonologist Gabriel Kraft into working for the group by capturing his spouse Sasha. He discovers artifacts linked to Dark Aether elder gods, including Cortifex the Deathless. By bonding with Cortifex via the artifact, Von List gains the power to raise armies of the dead. In a surprise to no one but Von List, Cortifex isn't interested in the German war efforts. He is obsessed with the power of the Construct, an impenetrable monolith that has existed since the dawn of the Dark Aether. The Construct tends to observe rather than interfere, but will occasionally select an Archon that is granted some of its power. After being rejected long before World War II, Cortifex petitioned the Construct again, and this time was successful. However, the Allied operators, along with various Elder Gods and Kraft, defeat Cortifex, stripping him of his power, letting him descend to the depths of the Dark Aether. With the evil defeated, Kraft holds Von List at gunpoint, demanding the location of Sasha. Von List smugly reveals that he killed Sasha long ago, and most of the letters that Kraft had received, thought to have been from his love, were actually penned by Von List. Kraft responds to this information by shooting Von List dead. Now an adult, Samantha Maxis is working with Grigori Weaver of Requiem, a clandestine CIA subgroup that aims to tackle the Russian Omega Group in the Dark Aether. Weaver, Elizabeth Gray, Mackenzie Carver, and Oscar Strauss work under the mysterious director and guide Requiem operators in the field. Omega reactivates a cyclotron in Morasko, Poland, which belonged to the Nazis as part of Project Endstation, the scientific arm of their experiments with the Dark Aether. This results in an outbreak. Following the containment of the Endstation breach, Maxis is captured at an Omega outpost and trapped in the Dark Aether by Dr. William Peck. Requiem team up with Maxis' contact at Omega, Sergei Ravanov, to break her free. Although rescued safely, Maxis is impacted by her time in the Dark Aether and is sent into confinement for tests by the director.
You going to electrocute me again?
I really hope it doesn't come to that.
And so began the Ethereum arms race. Set in Cold War's outbreak mode, Requiem and Omega battled for Ethereum reserves and weaponry throughout the Ural Mountains. A key event was Requiem's successful thwarting of Operation Inversia, dumping Omega's inversion warheads in the Pacific Ocean before they could be launched at the US mainland, much to the disgust of Dr. Peck.
If the inversion warheads were exhumed from the sea, would they still be operational?
Bonus points.
The sun will burn out before they break down. Why do you ask? Dr. Modi has said. Fuck!
Both sides of the arms race communicate with a stranger in the Dark Aether known as Kazimir Zykov, who was tasked with shutting down the Endstation facility. Despite their best attempts, they were far too late to save him. The Dark Aether had corrupted Zykov into the Forsaken, an eater of elder gods who had deceived many humans. Maxis, who has been in and out of confinement and participated in morbid experiments with the Director, is on hand to help defeat the Forsaken. In the final battle, she sacrifices herself for the good of mankind by sealing herself in the Dark Aether to weaken the Forsaken, which Requiem is then able to contain. As the dust settles in Maxis' sacrifice, outbreak zones around the world begin to collapse, and it's revealed that the Director is none other than Edward Richtofen. Not only was he pulling the strings of Requiem, but he also had his hand in Omega via Dr. Peck. Richtofen had essentially engineered the entire Ethereum arms race during the Cold War to serve his own agenda. With his work done, the Director orders agents to move in and arrest Requiem senior staff, and folds the department to focus on his true objective, Project Janus. We flash forward to the 1990s, where Dr. Peck is in the Pacific Ocean looking for some old friends. In 2021, Russian arms dealer Viktor Zakhaev acquires intel in the Dark Aether and enlists the mercenary group Terminus Outcomes to help him acquire the last remaining vials of Ethereum. This leads them to a bunker in Urzikstan, where a container of Ethereum surrounds the corpses of Weaver, Grey, Strauss and Carver. Military police challenge Zakhaev and Co during their escape, and in a last-ditch attempt to survive, Zakhaev lobs a vial of Ethereum, creating a horde of zombies and dooming the entire region to Dark Aether corruption. Operation Deadbolt is formed to counteract Terminus Outcomes, and the strike team work with an elderly yet suspiciously healthy Ravenov to contain the Urzikstan outbreak. Nothing gets in, nothing gets out. Deadbolt rescues Dr. Eva Jansen, a scientist who had been lulled into working for Zakhaev. She joins the cause but struggles with her sanity, envisioning herself being chased by familiar shadows and killing Ravenov. After several conversations with Ravenov, Jansen finally learns the truth of her origins. Her mother is Samantha Maxis. She was unnaturally created via genetic samples, and Ravenov was chosen to stay behind and watch over her. A Dark Aether entity arrived at the very moment Jansen was born, and has been shadowing her ever since. Despite her anger at Ravenov for withholding the truth, Jansen realises that in order to stop the outbreak, she must sever the tie between herself and the Dark Aether entity. Before destroying it, the entity warns Jansen that he is looking for her, and the Shadow Smiths will find her.
He is searching for you. The Shadow Smiths will take you.
3 months after the outbreak ends, Jansen arrives at the town of Liberty Falls to investigate her mother's past, only to be lured towards her hotel room's mirror. Assuming she is speaking to Samantha Maxis, Eva drops her guard, only to be yanked into the Dark Aether, leaving Ravenov in the 2020s alone. Richtofen wakes up after a nightmare about the death of his wife and child, who perished in a fire, believed to have been started by Weaver and Maxis before the events of Cold War. They thought Richtofen was alone, but received bad intel. The reason for the assassination attempt is currently unknown, but both Maxis and Weaver regret the outcome deeply. Just after Richtofen wakes up, an alarm sounds. An outbreak is in progress and the town of Liberty Falls is overrun. He fights his way down the mansion, but is dragged out the elevator by purple smoke and a giant sphere that sounds just like Samantha Maxis. She claims she is free. Operators on hand to clean up Liberty Falls come across Dr. Pericles Panos, Project Janus scientist who is trapped in the Dark Aether. Pericles had raised concerns over Richtofen before the outbreak and no longer trusts him. The strike team help Pericles and his unknown female acquaintance that has planned to escape the Dark Aether, but are tricked and swap places with him. Pericles runs off, stating he has some scores to settle.
Now, if you will excuse me, I have a few scores to settle. Bye-bye, Dark Aether.
6 years after Maxis' sacrifice, Requiem staff are still in captivity on Terminus Island. They are broken out by Dr. Peck and his new friend Maya Aguinaldo, a smuggler looking for her brother. Fragile Alliance is born with everyone seeking revenge on Richtofen. Maya finds her brother Nathan, but has become a hideous monster thanks to scientist Dr. Modi's twisted experiments. Maya puts him out of his misery and makes it clear she will have her revenge. Dr. Modi attempts to escape the island on a sub with the inversion warheads that Peck was looking for, but using the Synaptic Algorithm Module, SAM for short, Peck and Strauss are able to drive her back to the island. Modi is then killed by her most grotesque creation, Patient 13, who has become a giant Cthulhu-esque kraken. After disposing of Patient 13, the crew regroup to listen to Sam's discovery. Richtofen is searching for a Sentinel artifact in order to control Prima Materia. Two elements of the Chaos story are now front and centre in the Dark Aether story. Vanguard had teased its return via a radio from Kraft, who mentioned a secret society known as the Society Occult, which shared many similarities with the Order, and an amateur demonologist known as Alistair Rhodes.
Wait a minute!
Speaking of Kraft, he is somehow still alive in the 90s and has been captured by Ravenov in Avalon on behalf of a mobster named Franco. The crew agree to head to Avalon, except for Strauss, who refuses to search after an old wives' tale. That concludes the whistle-stop tour of the Dark Aether story up to Black Ops 6's launch. There's a lot I've missed out, but the main brushstrokes are there. There's much to theorise, and you'll find lore-centred channels cover it more in depth than I have. We had many questions heading into Black Ops 6, and this latest revelation has made that list even bigger. With a season of maps to follow, we must wonder how far Treyarch will take it. Will we see the Chaos crew return? Personally, I wouldn't bet on it, but nothing is off the table now. I'd love to see Scarlet, Diego, Bruno and Shaw again, and I'm sure many others would too. Aether will always have a special place in my heart. It's the zombie story that started it all. It's something we all have a strong connection with. But Treyarch's direction with the Dark Aether is exciting. It's a continuation, a sequel, and a story we all assumed was forgotten, all wrapped into one. A paradox of proportions that only zombies can produce.